Greetings, fellow game designers. Ron here at Lame Duck Studios. In this tutorial, I want to go over making dialog boxes because, well, I think they're kind of fun, and we haven't done that yet. So we're looking at the re-envisioning of blockout, if you guys have taken a look at that. And get this running. So, like RPGs or action-adventure games usually have some sort of dialogue. And whatnot, right? So we're going to go over how to set up dialog boxes and cycle through them and that sort of thing. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into a new project here. So I'm going to bring up a project window, and I'm in 4.24, but this should work in 4.26. And to kind of go back just a little bit, once you open up your projects, you can do your games down here. Next. And I'm going to be in a third-person project just for the sake of simplicity because we want a character that is already movable, and I don't have to make one, try to keep it small. We'll go to next. We'll keep this as blueprint. Quality can be scalable, that's fine. We don't need ray tracing. Desktop is fine, no starter content needed, and make sure you put this in a place where you can find it. And I'm going to call this dialog tutorial, or dialog tut, and hit create. Okay, so here is our project. And for this to work, we're going to create a very simple signpost that will be used for our dialog system. So right off the bat, I'm going to go ahead and just go over to my content browser here. Your layout might look different than mine. It's fine. I like my layout with my content browser here. Normally it's down here at the bottom. And I don't need my sequencer window, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. Let's see. So over here, I'm going to hit the little lines there. Open this up. And go to Content. I'm going to add New and do a folder. I'm going to call this Dialog. I'm going to put all of our dialog stuff in there. And the signpost that I'm going to use, I actually went ahead and made one. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and grab, let's go ahead and make a new folder. Add new. Put this in content as well. This is going to be the static mesh for the sign. And the sign I'm going to leave in the description, so you should be able to download that. I went ahead and made this for you guys. Go ahead and just grab that. That's fine as it is. I'll do an import. And then the textures for this. Just pull that in. Cool. Just real quick, I'll change this to sign. Jump into there. I'll just pull the textures in. Now this will come in again with the in the description, so you should just be able to download this stuff and add it to it. I'm going to go ahead and grab all of these, drag them in here. Let's see, we got the base color. The normal map goes here. Where are you? And this one's our roughness. We'll plug that one in. And this one's our metallic. I'll plug that one in. That should work. Hit the checkbox. And if I drag this signpost in, this is what it is. Not too shabby. Okay, so we have the base components for the sign. And again, you can use whatever you want for this object. I'm going to convert this into an actor. So I'm going to go to my dialog. I'll make an actor. So blueprints, actor. I'll call this one sign. Go into there. And the reason I'm making this into an actor is so that we can give it some properties. So right off the gate, I'll just go ahead and just grab a static mesh here. So this will be my sign. Load it in. That's all we need for that for the moment. I'm going to go and set the texture there. So for the actual dialog piece, we're going to use a component. So go up to Blueprint class here, and we're going to go down to Actor Component. Now what's great about Actor Component is that you can share this across multiple different actors or characters, and all of the stuff that you build in it is transferable. So if we were to do all of our dialogue on just the sign, we'd have to write that again. Whereas by putting it into a component that we can then move around, we can pass it on to anybody. This is going to be the dialog component. We also need a, come down to blueprints. We want to grab a blueprint interface. I'm just going to call this the dialog interface. Now if you already have an interface, all you have to do is open up your current one and just add a new function for sending messages. Inside our interface, we're going to do that here. We're going to call this the dialog message. Now compile that and save it. And then we want a widget. So let's go ahead and right-click, user interface widgets. And it's going to be the dialog pop-up widgets. All right. Let's make the component first. So open up the dialog component. And right out the gate, we want to have some variables. So over here on the variables tab, let's go ahead and open that. First one's going to be the dialog that we're going to use. So it's going to be the dialog list. Hit the drop down on that. I'm going to make this a string type. Poke its eyeball so it is editable. And then I also want this to be an array. So let's go over to our details to the right here. And then change the little drop down to array type. Compile that. And then we want another variable. This one's going to be the dialog start index. I'll poke the eyeball on that. Let's change this to a single type. And we'll make it an integer. We'll make one more, and this one's going to be the dialog end index. I'll poke the eyeball on that as well. And this should be enough to get us started. So go ahead and compile that. And you can see once we compile it, we get some options. Okay, so we're not going to need the begin play, and we won't need the event tick for this one. I'm going to go ahead and right-click and make a custom event. So custom event. And this is going to be send dialog to user widget. Or you could say dialog widget if you want to. So send dialog to dialog widget. Now to send the dialog anywhere, we have to find out where we're sending it to, right? So I'm going to go ahead and cast to. And the one who's going to have our dialogue is going to be our player. So in this case, I have my third person character. Now if you have your own player, you can always get him, or if you have, if it's Mario, get Mario. But whoever it is. And then we want to get the player character. If it's a player pawn, then you would get the player pawn. From the player, we're going to get the widget, but our player doesn't currently have the widget. So I'm going to go ahead and compile, save that real quick. I'm going to grab the third person character here. And just to be quick, I'm going to come up to here and do edit third person blueprint. And that'll drop me in here. Let's go where the begin play is. He doesn't have one. Okay, so begin play. And what I'm going to do here is just create the widget and store it as a variable. So create widget. And this is going to be our dialog pop-up widget. And then we're going to pass this into a variable. So promote to variable. This will be the dialog widget. Cool. So we have that. We also want a function or a custom event to open this when we're ready. So let's go ahead and make that as well. So custom event. This will be open dialog box. Okay, so go ahead and drag in our dialog widget. And I want to make sure that it's not currently on the screen, so is in viewport. If it is currently not in the screen, so we'll branch this, then we will add it to the screen. So off of here, add to viewport. And again, this is running off of false, so if it is not on screen, we will put it on screen. If it's already on screen, we'll do nothing. And if you try to put a widget to the screen that is already on screen, you'll get a warning or an error in your when you close the editor. So that will just get rid of or get around that. Let's go ahead and create a button. So go ahead to Edit, Project Settings. And then come down to Input. And then under Action Events, not Axis, we want the action. We're going to add an input. This is going to be my interact button. And I'm going to use the E key. So keyboard, and I'll type E and look for E key. There we go. I make a new spot over here, and I'll go ahead and right click, get my E key, so interact button, if I could spell. There it is. We're going to use this to actually send a little message to whatever we're looking at. So go ahead and hit compile real quick, and before we can even really use this, go to class settings. We're going to look for our interface. We're going to add our dialog interface. Compile that. And from our pressed, we're going to do a sphere trace by channel. So sphere trace by channel. Now I'm using a sphere trace just because they're a little bit bigger than a line trace. Line traces, you can miss stuff really easily. This will give us a little bit more meat on the bone. So from our start, we'll do get actor location. And we will be scanning ahead of our player, so we'll also get the actor forward vector. We're going to add that to our current location. So plus, so vector plus vector, and that'll go to the end. Okay, and then some distance off of our forward vector. So off of here, we will do times float. So vector times float. Plug that in. This is going to be our look distance, promote to variable. We'll call that look at distance. Compile that. I'll put 250. I think that's good enough. We will make the radius however big you want. You can make a variable for it if you like, just that it's faster. So off of here, let's just do promote to variable. And I'll expose both of these so I can have them in the editor when I'm playing. The new variable will be scan radius. Do an interact scan radius. And I'll do that as 25. So if I compile that and kind of hop out for just a second, you can see if I select the player and then I scroll down here, you'll see under default values we have the look distance and our interact scan radius. So we can change those right here if we need to adjust them on the editor. If I hit play from the window, press my interact key. Oh, I didn't set it to visible. That would be helpful. Let's go back in. Visibility, debug type. Let's make this, I'm going to do for duration. That way it shows up on screen a little bit better for the recording. Compile, save. There's the scan distance. I'm looking this way, here's the scan. If it hits something, it'll give us a return. Okay. And what we're going to do is right after we hit something, we're going to do a branch. And then from our out hit, we're also going to do a break hit result. Now I always do a branch, that way we guarantee that the return is if we hit something, but really if you're using the hit result, this will only return if it ever hit anything anyway, so this is kind of a redundancy check. So you can really skip this, but I always use it. From our hit actor, we are going to send message. So send message. And you know, whenever you do send, it gives you this message, but that sends an AI message. I don't want that. But if you type in message, it'll open up the dialog interface, and you can see that we have our dialog message right there. And that's pretty much it for this part. So this one, if you want to label that, use interact button. This one is open dialog widget, and this little chunk is create dialog widget. Okay, so we got that. Let's jump into the sign. Signpost. For our sign, we are going to also add in, I don't need these for now, I'm going to go ahead and delete those. Go to the class settings and we will add in our dialog interact. So dialog interface, that's what it is. Compile that. Right click, we're going to get the event dialog message. When it comes in, make sure it's the one that has the interface icon on it. If it doesn't have that, you have the wrong one. And then from here, we are going to grab the information from our sign. So go ahead and add component. We're going to do the dialog component. And then from our dialog component, we just want to send dialog to the dialog widget. Okay, so this will get information out, but we don't really have anything on this part yet. So if I compile and save, and I open this up, it brings us back here, right? We had this part where we cast to our player, and now we can pull from the player and do the open dialog box. So that'll open it up to the screen, which is great, but there's nothing in it currently, so you won't see anything. We also want to get from our player though, get dialog widget, because we're going to need this in the future. So go ahead and compile and save. We'll minimize, and I'll drag my sign in and just place it wherever. And you can bring in more than one sign if you like. And if I were to select a sign, whoops, that one's tilted. If I select the sign, and I come over to the right here, and drag this down just a little bit, it's always hidden, but you can see we have the sign, and we also have the dialog widget. And if I open that up, we should have, under default values, our dialog list, and our starting and our ending index. What's great about this is if I hit the plus sign here, and add some dialog to my list, you can say I have an array. We want to make sure that the starting value is wherever we want to start on this list, and then the ending value is wherever we want to end on this list. In this case, my last one is 1, so I'll go ahead and put that in there. I can say, you know, hi, this is a sign. And the next one could be, this is the last thing this sign will say. Right? Of course, if I were to go hit play at this point and try to scan it, nothing happens because we have not yet built the widget. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll save real quick, make sure I get all that. Unreal likes to crash. Open up the widget. And inside the widgets, we have our canvas panel. Let's go ahead and drag in. Let's grab a border. And we also want to grab a text. So grab some text. I'll drop it in on the border. And I think for this, I also want to do some size adjustments. Well, I guess we could do some size on the border here. That's fine. Anchor, I'm going to set this to center. Make sure you're on the border, not the text. Anchor that to the center there. And then I'm going to set position X and Y to 0. And I will do my alignment at 0.5 and 0.5. Again, this is all personal preference. I will set the size of the dialog box. Let's make this 600 by 300. Come down a little bit. All right, so let's come down to color and opacity. This one's for the content. We're not going to mess with that one. If you have an image you want to load, you can load that here. For the brush color, let's make this, I like doing like a medium gray. I think that's fine. A little bit too bright. Let's take that down a little bit more. And I'll even make this somewhat transparent. And then for the text, you can have this wherever you like. You can center it, you can do whatever. So I'm just going to leave it here for now. Compile that, take the text. We want to set this to be a variable. We also want the text title, something that we can actually find. So I'm going to call this dialog text. Okay, jump over to the graph. And then in here, we need some variables. So right off the bat, we need to know who we're talking to. So we want the player. So let's go ahead and do the player reference. Player reference. And for this, I'm going to use my third-person character. So third-person character. We want this to be instance editable, and we also want to expose it on spawn. The next variable in our list is going to be our dialog. If I can spell. List. It's going to be of type string. And again, it will be an array. We also want the start index. It's going to be an integer type. So make sure it's single and an integer. And we'll also make the dialog end. Okay. We don't need our event construct. This one we don't need. And we don't need the event tick. We can get rid of those. On the event construct, we have a couple of things we're going to do. Firstly, we want to set up a listener. So listen for action input. Sorry, input action. Listen for input action. So go to the action name here, and we want to make sure we're using the same name that we set our button to. So if I go to project settings here, come down to input, I named it interact button. I'm going to go ahead and just copy that. Make sure I paste that in here. For the event type, I'm going to use pressed, but you have a few other options if you want. You can double click or whatever, but I'm going to use pressed. Consume, yes, I will consume the input. And for the callback, we'll have to create a custom event. So right click, we'll do custom event. And this is going to be update dialog message. And that'll be our callback. As this widget is being created, we also want to grab our player reference. And this is going to disable our character's movement. So disable input. We also need a player controller, so get player controller. There we go. And I'll set that here. Now, if you want to have the mouse pop up and you want buttons on this, you can also, from our player controller, set show mouse. I'll add that here. And I'll show you how to add a button as well. So compile that, save that. Make sure if you're using the mouse, hit this. Again, the mouse part is optional. You don't have to do this. You can do this completely using our callback. Okay? So I'll show you the callback first, and then we'll come back and do the mouse. Okay? Let's label this stuff so we know what we're doing. This one is set callback for interact button. This is disable movement. And this one is show mouse. And I'll put if needed in there to emphasize that this is not necessary for this, but is an option. Okay, the first thing we want to do is actually get the information from the player. So before we can update the message, we have to know what we're updating. So I'm going to make a new spot, custom event. And this is going to be get dialog from user. Or actually, it's not going to be from user. We'll do from source. Get dialog from source. That makes more sense. And then the dialog we're going to get will be the list in our starting and our ending indexes. So let's add those to our event here. So select your event, come down to inputs, and we'll add the first one, which is going to be our dialog list. And then this will be a string type. And then we also want this to be an integer. That's going to be single type. This will be our starting index. Now you can also put this on a structure, so you don't have to rewrite these every time. Oops, wrong type. There we go. And then if you make a structure, you can just load the structure in, and it's a lot faster. All right, so off of these, I will set this one, and then set our starting index and our ending index. So let's just run these through. And we do want one more variable, which is our current dialog index. So current dialog index. This will also be an integer type. Whoops, not 64. We want the regular. And we can compile that, save that. All right, now we can come up over here. And the first thing we're going to do is check to see if this is a new message. So off of here, we'll do a branch. And we need to know what when this message started. So if it's the first time you've talked to the sign or talked to a player, are we starting in the middle of a conversation or are we starting at the beginning of a conversation? We should know that. So right here, I'm going to drag off from our condition. I will promote to a variable. We'll make that new message. So I'll say is new message. If it's true, and it should always be true on the start, so I'll compile. And new message should always be true on the start. We are then going to set this to false. And we also want to get our current dialog index. So our current dialog index should be the starting index. So start index. This is where this starts at, right? Let's grab our dialog text. And we want to set the text, so set text. We will get the one in parentheses down here. Run that through. And this is going to be our dialog list. So get dialog list. we will do a get by reference. So by reference or by copy. So a copy creates a copy in memory. A reference is more temporary. So once it's done, it's removed from memory. Go ahead and grab that, plug it in. And then the index that we're going to use here is going to come from our dialog. You can just plug this straight in if you want to, or if you like not having wires crisscross, you can come in and grab the current dialog index and just drop that here. Okay. Oh, and I actually did this. I did this off of false, but we really want that if it's a new message, that would actually be off of true. So we're going to go up and do off of true. Let's move this up here. Okay, so if we've already started, then we're going to be on the next update. We will no longer be in a new message, right? Because we turned that off. So from the false, we want to do an increment. So let's go ahead and increment. And we want to increment the correct type. We currently have integers, so we're going to use an integer type. The integer I'm going to increment will be the dialog index, so get. And we want to have two safety checks. The first safety check is going to be if we've hit the end, and then the second one is going to be if we've hit the end of our list, because those could be two different areas. So let's grab the dialog end index, and I'll also grab the dialog list as well. So we want to check to see if our current dialog is less than or equal to the end. So dialog, we'll say less than or equal to. And I'll just hold down Control and just move this dot down. So we're going to compare this dialog. We'll do a branch. So if our current dialog is ever less than or equal to our dialog end, then we are allowed, so if true, we are allowed to do our update. If, however, we are greater than this, then we have to exit. But we're not quite done with this yet, so we're not going to run this directly through. We're going to add a branch here, so off of true, branch. And this is the additional safety check. We want to make sure our dialog index is also less than or equal to. And to avoid having extra wires, I'm just going to drag these in like this. Let's grab him, duplicate it. We want to make sure that we are not stepping outside of our array. So we're going to do last index from the array. So as long as we're less than or equal to our last index, we are also okay to continue. Okay. In the event that our index is greater than the ending that we've set, or the end of the array, then we have to go to the end of the dialog. So let's go ahead and exit this by hitting false. So we want to set is new message. So our new message will be true because we're starting over. And we can take the false of this as well. And then we're also going to set our current dialog to 0. And we want to take our player reference. And we want to enable input, so enable input, so we can start moving again. Once again, we need our player controller, so get player controller. And if you have the mouse shown, we should also turn the mouse off. So show mouse cursor. And we will turn the mouse off by leaving it unchecked. Then we'll label this. This is reset default values. Enable player inputs. Remove mouse. And the last thing we should do is also remove the widget. So we're going to come out of here and we'll do remove from parent. Close dialog box. Okay. For these little safety checks, we'll just do this one. If dialog current dialog is less than the last index. This one, if current dialog is less than the index set by user. Okay, so we can compile that, save that. That should be ready to go. Let's go back to our dialog component, and we will take our dialog widget here, and we will do get dialog from source. And I'm going to set this before we actually open the dialog box. So from our cast, we'll just run this through, and then run that to here. All these wires, you know. And the stuff that needs to go in here comes from here. So here's our dialog list, our starting index, and our ending index. Save all that. I'll jump out. And now if I hit play, let's see if this works. If I scan it, hey, we got a text block. Look at that. And it exits. Now there was a bit of an issue on the initial scan. You can see here it says access none trying to read the player reference. So the reason, I'll go back and show this error as well. So when I hit and scanned, you can see the first one is the text block here. That should be the dialog. And then the second scan, which ends up working, that does the information, of course. But you can see I can still kind of move. My player moves around. The reason my player doesn't get disabled also is tied to the same reason. So it's because of this property getting read here. So if we go and follow the line here, it says right here on Dialog Widget, this is where the error is. And if we go farther up the chain, we can say, hey, let's go here and find out what's broken. So it'll take us here. So what's bad is the reference. If we go to, and the reason this is bad is we never set it. So let's go back to our third-person character here. Remember that we created this variable and we told it to expose on spawn. So now, when this is being read, we should see the player reference variable input. If you don't see that, just make sure that you set it to be exposed on spawn. And then you can refresh the node here. To get the player reference, we're just going to pass that in. So right off of here, we'll just do self. So get reference to self. So the player will pass itself into the widget as it is created. So now if I scan, it should, didn't start off with their correct spot there. That's fine. But I cannot move, which is great because I don't want to move while the dialog's up. So that part works. Let's see why that one is going. Ah, I see why. So what we didn't do is right off of here, for our get dialog from source, we did not tell it to update the message. So let's go down here and just move this back some. We want to update dialog message. And this will set the first time we look at it. So now when I scan for the first time, we start at the correct index. And if we exit, we exit. And this sign has nothing, so if I scan it, there's nothing to say, and I can exit. Ooh, there's an error. This one says access none, trying to read the array. Right, because this one has no dialog. Right? Then I grab my second sign, grab the dialog component. Remember that it's sometimes hidden underneath this search bar. So I can add an element. I'll do this one. I have nothing to say. My starting index and my ending index are the same in this case. Let's grab one more sign just for the fun of it. What should we have this one do? We should have it sing, right? Let's get demonetized here. I saw the sign. There we go. My last index in this case would be 3. Now, you might be saying, well, can't you just get the last index from the array? And the answer is yes, we're actually doing that. So the last index in the array is here. Right? We're scanning for that here. And you can run this just off of that, so if there's nothing else to search for. But if you want to have some more control, or you want to send like an event down the line to change the dialog, you can pick and choose which one. So in this case, let me choose the second index and see what happens. Right? So that stopped at my second index. Let me go outside the array. So I did 4. Right? So it should exit and not cause any issues if I ever tell it to go outside of my index, because we have that additional safety check. Okay? And then the other thing is, of course, the button. So let's go ahead and add the button in. So on my sign here, let's go ahead and drag in a button. I'll put one down here. I'm not going to put anything on it, but I will set it up so that you can just exit the button. So down here, sorry, grab the button, do an on-clicked event, and I'm just going to take this button and I'm going to tell it to update the dialog message. So update message. Okay, so if I scan, I should be able to hit and update the message as well. Okay, you might notice that whenever that happens, we have to click onto the widget at first. What you can do to kind of get around the initial click is set the input mode to UI endgame. And what that'll do, if you're using the mouse, it'll set the widget in focus to soft here. What that'll do is it'll make it so that when the widget first pops up, we don't have to click the mouse should automatically be red. And that works, and you can also use your input key. But you'll notice that my mouse does not get back on the screen. So like if I turn my mouse, nothing happens. So if you're using this part, oops, sorry. If you're using this, you do want at the end, down here, to set input mode to game only. And that'll give you your control back. So now when I exit, my mouse is back. So that's going to wrap it up for this video. If you like this sort of content, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. If you want to see a more advanced version of this, where we grab dialog from a data list, from an Excel spreadsheet, and kind of import it from an outside source, leave a message down below, and I'll look into doing that. And I shall see you next time. Hey guys, thanks for checking out the channel. Misty and I both thank you. If you enjoyed that video you just watched, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, I'm getting into NFTs. Those are big these days. I was thinking about creating my own coin, but we'll get into that at a later date. But NFTs are pretty hot right now. I'm converting my artwork to NFTs. You can see my Rarible page right here. I've only got 4 items, but I'm adding one as they go. They're not cheap to make, so gotta make them as they go. If you want to support the channel other ways, of course, there's Lame Duck Studios merch, which you can see right here on my Teespring store, as well as Amazon. Speaking of Amazon, I have my books up there under Bruce RF, which is my pen name. Life and Times of Dinah Marton, as well as The Guardian's Path of Ascension. You can flip through those and see the reviews, and grab a copy, read it, tell me what you think. It helps me out as an author. It also helps me out as, everything goes back into the stuff that I'm doing. So more content for you. If you want to keep up with me throughout the day, or just kind of see what's going on in life, hit me up on Twitter under BruceRF1. Again, that is my pen name. If you want to see what's going on my blog, ronflowersjr.me, you can see what I'm writing about, what else is going on in life, difficulties that I have with my projects that I'm working on. A lot of my devlog stuff kind of goes there before it comes here, so it's another way of kind of getting into that. I do also have a Patreon where I release content early if you want to get access to things ahead of time, because most of the stuff that I produce, I do things on Sundays and I post on Wednesdays most often, but it goes to Patreon first, so it's kind of there usually a week or so ahead of time, and then it has a release schedule. So if you want to see things early, go there. Let's see, what else is going on? You can also follow me on Facebook under you can do the Lame Duck Studios Facebook or the Bruce RF Facebook. Both of those are available. And a lot of these links are down in the description, so if you want to just hit those up and just click on them and follow them through, that's another way of getting there. Also, we are at 1,300 subscribers. Woo! We're this close to 10,000. But small milestones first. Let's get to 2,000 subscribers, and then we will continue our road building toward that 10,000 milestone. That is going to be pretty awesome for this channel, my humble channel. So yeah, that's all I have for you on this outro. It's a bit of a long one, but a lot of stuff going on. Anyways, stay tuned, and I shall see you next time.